So at the beginning of this year, one of my only reading resolutions was to read more non-fiction from cover to cover, as opposed to, say, an essay from a collection or scanning things for research, to sit down and really fully enjoy non-fiction books. And I set myself the low goal of 10 books. When I said in the video at the beginning of 2016 I wanted to read 10 non-fiction books in the year, I did want to read more than that, but I also wanted to set myself a manageable goal that I was pretty certain that with a little bit of conscientious choosing of my books, I would meet. And I have to say, I have more than met this goal. According to my Goodreads, I have read 21 non-fiction books in 2016 from cover to cover, and I've talked about most of them on this channel already as I've done my wrap-ups throughout this year, but I wanted to reflect more generally on the process of increasing the non-fiction books I read this year, how I found the experience, some of the best books I've read, and where I want to go from here. So I hope you are interested in this video too. I know as I've talked more and more about non-fiction on this channel, I've had a lot of comments from people saying it's so nice to see more people talking about non-fiction books, and I really have experienced so much fun this year reading more non-fiction. I have absolutely loved it. It's very much been one of those processes that has gained momentum as it has gone along. So in 2015, in contrast to 2016, I read 7 non-fiction books from cover to cover. But what I can see starting in 2015 is that I read more of those non-fiction books in the second half of the year, and then I read more than that in the first half of 2016, and then in the second half of 2016 I read even more than in the first half of 2016. It was, as I read more non-fiction, I wanted to read more non-fiction. I got more and more into it and more curious about what non-fiction was out there. I found the process of reading non-fiction a lot faster than I used to, and I just became a real convert to reading more non-fiction. Now, like I said, I read 7 non-fiction from cover to cover the previous year. I probably read a lot of articles for university, and I've always been somebody that has liked to consume non-fiction, but on a much smaller scale to the fiction I read recreationally. So in that respect, it's been quite a big change for me, and I feel like I am a better person because of it. I think reading all of this non-fiction, from comedian memoirs to hardcore political commentary, has helped me learn what I want from non-fiction and also what makes good non-fiction. I've learned more about the way you can present non-fiction topics. I also think it's helped with my argument skills, if that makes sense. I feel like it's helped me develop a more nuanced voice when I'm trying to explain my point of view in a situation. And not just because I've read some amazing arguments and explanations in books that I can recall, but also because it's challenged me to disagree with things and explore why I disagree with certain things, and it's helped me learn to better word my points of view. At least I feel it has anyway. It's also helped me feel more comfortable and secure in voicing my opinion. I've always been super opinionated, but I'm not somebody that likes confrontation in real life particularly, and sometimes people can really intimidate you, and not necessarily because they're right, but just because they have that power to be quite intimidating, and it can make me shut down. I'm sure it makes a lot of people shut down and kind of back away from what they're saying and just want it all to be over. And I feel reading more non-fiction has helped me escape that trap and helped me feel more confident in saying, look, this is why I believe something. And I'm happy to have an adult conversation with you about it, because I wouldn't feel this way if I didn't think it was right. So I think I've just gone on for quite a long time actually about that, but but I think that's all really important in why I've been enjoying reading more non-fiction and why I would encourage you to read more non-fiction. But now down to the nitty-gritty, I thought I would tell you a bit about what kind of non-fiction I've been reading and some of the standout books amongst that. So I separated them into 4 categories. Of my 21 non-fiction books in 2016, I read 4 ancient history books from cover to cover. I've read a lot of other ancient history stuff, chapters, articles, whatever. I mean, you can assume that given what I spend a lot of my time doing. I've read 2 celebrity/comedian books. And as there's still a couple of weeks left in the year, I can say quite safely that I will have finished another comedian/celebrity memoir/musings book before the end of the year, because I'm 70% of the way through the audiobook right now of Amy Poehler's book, Yes Please. So that will go up to 3, which will make my total 22 by the end of the year. I then read 4 books I would categorise as politics generally, and then I have 11 books that I would categorise in some way as feminist. All of these categories are a little bit vague, and the feminist one obviously has a lot more in it, but within that category, a number of those could easily be put into the politics section, but they also in some way deal with feminism, sexism and gender politics in there, so I put them in the feminism section. Another couple explicitly deal with race, as do some of the politics books. A couple of the books I've put into the feminism section also explicitly deal with LGBTQI, queer or gender subjects. But these are all things that I would hope any good intersectional feminist book would cover. So those are my categories that I've made, obviously a little bit vague, and like I said, you've heard me talk about quite a few of these books over the course of this year. Now, most of these I have loved actually. I've had very few duds. I've only had 2 2-star non-fiction books of this year, which are unfortunately Mary Lefkowitz's Women in Greek Myth and Sarah Pascoe's Animal. Unfortunately, on reflection, both of these books were quite disappointing reads. Very different books, and disappointing for different reasons. Not 1-star books, but not great either. I have no 3-star non-fiction books, so the rest are all 4 and 5 stars, and 7 of those were 5-star books. And I only read 18 5-star books this year, 4 of which were all rereads that I'd already given 5 stars in previous years, so that's 7 out of 14 new 5-star books were non-fiction, which is amazing. It just goes to show how much I have enjoyed reading non-fiction this year. Now obviously some of these books are going to be in my favourite books of 2016 videos, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about specific 5-star titles, but what I do want to mention is some of the authors I've discovered this year because of non-fiction, one of whom is the spectacular Angela Davis, who I've read 2 non-fiction books by this year, which are Are Prisons Obsolete and Freedom is a Constant Struggle, both of which I put into the politics section. Obviously one that deals with the prison system, and the other one was a collection of essays that dealt with the various different political topics and political activism. And these were both 5-star reads for me. I have fallen in love with Angela Davis and her work. She is absolutely phenomenal, and probably the author in this video I would say you should go and read above all else. I also watched the documentary 13th, which is also about the prison system this year, which has interviews with Angela Davis included in it, so if you have more time to go and watch a documentary than you do to read a book, then I'd check that out, but her books are also not particularly long, at least the 2 I read weren't. Angela Davis's strength and eloquence with language and rhetoric is just mind-blowing, and I've just found reading her books really informative and inspirational. I also read my first Owen Jones book this year, although Owen Jones does only have 2 books, and I read The Establishment with the intention of hopefully getting to Chavs really soon. I don't have my own copy at the moment, but once I do get a copy it will shoot straight to the top of my list because I thought The Establishment was fantastic. It was quite a tough read at moments. It dealt with UK politics, and yeah, it was quite tough at moments, but really, really interesting. And Owen Jones is somebody whose journalism I followed and who I've watched on the television and on YouTube and read articles by over the years, so it was nice to finally read one of his books. And obviously I thought it was a really good book, and one thing I'd taken away from reading The Establishment is that I would like in 2017 to read more UK based books about politics. So a lot of the books on feminism and politics I read in 2016 were very America centric. I think it's good to familiarise yourself with stuff going on at home, and I'd also like to read some more books about other countries other than the UK and America. Which brings me to I Am Malala. This is a non-fiction book that blew my socks off because I was not expecting it to be as amazing as it was. This book, for being on such a hard topic because it followed Malala, who was shot by the Taliban for fighting for girls' education in her country, was weirdly uplifting. It was a really fast, easy read, but didn't sacrifice any of the emotion or intellectual discussion in there, and would just recommend that one to everyone as well. I also quite enjoyed my little 3 celebrity books. Like I mentioned, I'm almost finished with Amy Poehler's book. I read Amy Schumer's book, but I listened to that one on audiobook as well, both read by the comedians, and I think that's something I will also say. I've enjoyed listening to a few of these books on audiobook, especially the ones that are read by the author, and if that's a comedian, all the better. I also read Tony Robbinson's autobiography, who is a childhood hero of mine, and that was just a lot of fun. And these were very light books, as you would expect, but still really engaging, and I've always avoided books like that, to be honest, and I don't think I will in the future. I think they're really nice to intersperse amongst your other reading, and especially on audiobook. I kind of wish I'd listened to Tony Robbinson's book on audiobook because he does read it. I've only read one non-fiction graphic novel this year actually, and I'm a big fan of the non-fiction graphic novel genre. I've done a whole video on it if you're interested. But I did, somehow this year has escaped with only one non-fiction graphic novel. A few of the books I have categorised into the feminism section were books I read because of the Feminist Orchestra book club, which is the feminist book club that I started here online, and a few of you are members of. So Virginia Woolf, I Call Myself a Feminist, Girls Will Be Girls, I Am Malala. Everyday Sexism was a read for the book club, but I previously read it right at the beginning of this year, and it's been really wonderful to share that experience with other people, and I think those of you that have been reading along when they can have been enjoying it too. It's just an interesting way to be introduced to new topics, and in searching for books for the book club and receiving your suggestions, that has empowered me to look for more books on these topics myself, and to explore subtopics that have come up in our reading, which has been really amazing. And I think a book club is a really great way to help you read more non-fiction. Although the Feminist Orchestra isn't exclusively non-fiction, it obviously comes up quite often. All of the ancient history books I read were in some way related to the field of research I'm currently in at university, so I haven't talked about them much on this channel because, in a way, although I like to film videos about ancient history and talk about PhD and studying tips and that kind of thing, when I'm sort of in the middle of a specific research topic, I don't like to talk about it online because I do like to keep those things separate. If it's very current, I'd rather do videos on stuff I studied in the past and learnt about than stuff I'm currently working on, because this is my fun time. And I also want the time to develop more nuanced thoughts on what I've been reading. But I think that covers all of the main groups that I made. And I have been sitting here filming for over half an hour now, so I'm a little bit scared to go and try and edit this video. So I'll leave it here. If you have any questions that I haven't talked about in this video, then please do leave them down below. If you've got any non-fiction book recommendations for me, please let me know. And before I go, I guess I should set some sort of goal for 2017. I think reasonably I will aim for 25. Maybe I'll read more than that, maybe I won't, but I think that's a fair goal given how this year has gone and how much non-fiction I want to get to. And if you're interested, All in all, I've read 82 books in the year and 22 of those have been non-fiction. So I'm still reading predominantly fiction with a bit of poetry on the side, but I'm really proud of the amount I have read and I'm excited to see what I get to read next. But until next time guys, happy reading and I'll see you all again soon. Bye! And in case you're looking for more YouTubers who talk about non-fiction, I will link below a few YouTubers who talk about non-fiction semi-regularly on their channel, so you can check them out if you haven't already.